For more than 2 decades, viewers have followed the Brown family through the trials of plural marriage, domestic dysfunction, and living life on camera. From grand estates to strained family meals, their soap opera-style drama was ever present for all to witness. But no one could have predicted the bombshell that would turn all of that upside down. It all started with a secret tape. A tape so incendiary that it not only challenged the delicate peace of the Brown household, but also laid the groundwork for a legal firestorm that would end up imprisoning Kody Brown for 22 years. The culprit? Aurora Brown, the youngest and most neglected member of this sprawling clan, whose patient observation over the years had recorded what others had missed. For years, Kody's dominance never challenged. He was the patriarch, the central figure of sister wives, the one who made the decisions that governed the lives of his wives and children. But what Aurora's tape uncovered was something much darker than anyone ever could have imagined. It wasn't merely about money, manipulation, or favoritism. It was about abuse on a systemic level, coercion, and an empire built on lies by meticulous design. The tape itself had been stored away, locked in a drawer, and not even seen by her closest siblings. Aurora had observed, waited, and recorded. And when she finally chose to release it to the authorities, it kicked off a chain reaction that could not be halted. Exposure clips soon found themselves in the hands of lawyers, investigators, and even the judge in the case. The Brown family, once the face of plural marriage in America, was soon to be brought to its ultimate judgment. But first, there was drama in the courtroom. How could one tape have so much influence? What had Kody been keeping secret for 20 years? And what would it cost him legally, financially, and emotionally to have those secrets revealed? The initial reports filtered in financial misdeeds, coerced deals, and accusations of crimes that covered decades. Aurora's testimony would be the linchpin of the case for the prosecution, a picture of a family manipulated from top to bottom, all in the interests of one man's ego and unlimited authority. When the story burst across the media, social media exploded. Fans were appalled. Comment threads spilled over with shock, outrage, and, in a few instances, long overdue vindication of the women who had silently endured in secret. This was not a typical reality television scandal. This was a tale that would forever alter the face of the Brown family. Aurora's tape was not only proof, it was a key that opened the doors to years of secret accounts, secret deals, and conduct that the patriarch had worked hard to keep hidden. And as officials started piecing together the chronology of Kody's behaviors, it was apparent that the ramifications would be severe. The initial hearing was to be held in a highly secured courthouse in Utah. Cameras were prohibited, the public was limited, and only important family members and legal representatives were allowed access. But the rumors outside the courtroom seemed to indicate the tempest brewing inside. What the public would eventually find out was more disturbing than even the most disturbing episode of Sister Wives ever produced. The setup was complete. The Brown family, fractured and weakened, was going to be hit with a legal barrage that would end in a verdict no one expected. 22 years for Kody Brown. And it all started with a single secret tape recorded in stealth that would eventually reveal the magnitude of a patriarch's deception and manipulation. Aurora Brown was always reserved, a background figure in the bustle of a polygamous household, with multiple wives, siblings, and omnipresent cameras. But beneath her serene facade, she had been watching for years, watching her father's subtle manipulations, his financial machinations, and most crucially, his power to tell the story of the entire family. The clandestine tape hadn't been made in a fit of temper. Aurora had planned it out. She had witnessed the suffering her brothers and sisters experienced, and knew no outsider could comprehend the degree of Kody's domination without a tangible piece of proof. This wasn't vengeance, it was justice. Inside the courthouse, it was charged. The judge, a tough woman with years of experience dealing with complicated family and financial matters, leaned forward as Aurora's lawyer was about to offer the tape. The courtroom, even though small and severely limited, seemed brimming with expectation. Reporters outside were already wondering, could a single tape really hold enough influence to bring conviction against a man with decades of power and fame? Aurora testified. Her voice was soft, but it had an undeniable authority. She detailed vividly how Kody had managed family money, tucking money into hidden accounts, coercing wives into signing contracts they didn't know the meaning of, and manhandling children's inheritances. Each discovery was greeted with gasps from the court and scribbles from the lawyers, who realized they were seeing the first fissures in a well-built empire. Next came the tape. Aurora described how it had been recorded over a period of several months, picking up on conversations and events that nobody had ever documented before. Kody's voice, clear and authoritative, was unmistakable. He outlined plans that revealed coercion, financial abuses, and manipulation so severe that the court was left in shock. Even Kody's lawyers seemed shaken. They had prepared for weeks, anticipating vague rumblings or hearsay. Not this. Irrefutable proof, laid out before a judge who would not abide half. Truths the patriarch of the Brown family was for the first time exposed. Outside of the courtroom, the reactions were swift. Fans and critics alike poured social media with clips of Aurora talking, lauding her courage while castigating Kody's behavior. The tale spread rapidly, with the media covering it as a real-life soap opera more surprising than anything television ever aired. The prosecution highlighted a single salient fact: the tape was not a family issue. It exposed systematic abuse of trust, financial exploitation, and coercive tactics on an epic scale over 4 decades. The judge nodded, taking in the gravity of the evidence. It was evident that the image the family had created for themselves in the public eye was about to be shattered. But the surprise wasn't so much what was on the tape. It was what it meant. If the judge believed the evidence, the ramifications would be devastating. Careers would be destroyed. Reputations would be tarnished, and Kody might spend years in prison. And yet, as Aurora departed the stand, the court was strangely quiet, the tension palpable. Everyone knew this was only the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the trial would uncover still more secrets, hidden funds, coerced deeds, and dealings with the wives much more sinister than any Sister Wives viewer could even envision. Aurora's tape was a lock, and every day in court was a turn, drawing Kody one step closer to a sentence that would redefine the family for all eternity. The second, the courtroom lights bounced off the shiny wooden benches. The seriousness of Kody Brown's financial empire started to unspool. Aurora's tape wasn't any ordinary recording. It held Kody's own confessions, recorded in those moments he thought no one else was around. The first shocker came when the prosecution brought out bank statements, property titles, and investment records. Secret accounts, worth millions of dollars, were followed to overseas destinations. Some directly in Kody's control, the others channeled through shell corporations and business fronts. Every disclosure caused the gallery to whisper, and reporters scribbled with fervor, aware that the tale they would take out into the world would disturb millions. Aurora's account lent a human touch to the figures. She spoke of discussions where Kody had pressured his wives to sign over properties, cleverly couching it as a family requirement while reserving most of the money for himself. It wasn't the money, she said, her voice shaking but unyielding. It was the control he had over us. Every choice, every step, it was his way or nothing. The judge, who had years of experience with complex family and money cases, leaned forward, his forehead creased. He posed direct questions about when transfers were made and why each one was made. Aurora, accompanied by her lawyer, described how Kody manipulated accounts to present the appearance of shared responsibility, but actually shifted funds for his own benefit. Courtroom witnesses were shocked. The intricacy of Kody's web was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Real estate across several states, investment portfolios camouflaged as family trusts, and even small businesses nominally run by the wives, but all ultimately enriching Kody. The scale was immense, and the implications were dire. The prosecution then played a segment of Aurora's tape. In it, Kody's own voice detailed plans for a property sale that would benefit the family publicly, while secretly diverting hundreds of thousands to a private account. The recording captured his tone, calm, confident, almost boastful. It was the smoking gun the court had been waiting for, clear, deliberate intent. Kody's defense team scrambled. They claimed the tapes were selective, taken out of context, and did not reflect ill intent. But the judge, used to reading between lines, was not persuaded. All the evidence supported Aurora's version. The figures, the transfers, and her precise memories drew a canvas of decades, spanning conspiracy that extended far from family feuds. Beyond the courtroom, the response was immediate. Social media erupted with the news, Kody Brown's hidden millions revealed, and Aurora Brown's tape could revolutionize everything. Sister Wives fans argued viciously, while detractors declared it an overdue exposure. The news made the trending list in hours, with attention reaching far beyond reality television faithful. At the end of that day, one thing became certain: the underpinning of Kody Brown's empire was shattered. The judge, having considered the evidence and Aurora's testimony, indicated that this case could well result in criminal charges rather than merely civil fines. The courtroom was filled with a sense of tension, with everyone knowing that the next phase of the trial would take the story into even darker, more lurid places. The mood in the courtroom changed as the first of Kody's wives testified. Janelle, never one to ruffle feathers, entered in a quiet resolve. The room went silent, all eyes on her as she started to list years of manipulation and financial dishonesty. "I trusted him," Janelle asserted, her voice firm but tinged with feeling. "I believed in the family we were creating. But through the years it came to be obvious that the choices I believed were for all of us were actually only for him." She chronicled incidents that had before been attributed to innocuous squabbles, mysterious cashing of joint accounts, spontaneous sales of assets without agreement, and the coercion to invest personal funds into companies that appeared to be real but were actually controlled by Kody in secret. Each disclosure painted a picture of control, betrayal, and cunningly hidden greed. Christine was next, her own testimony even more incendiary. She brought with her documents that indicated Kody's intentional hiding of assets intended for the wives, including letters and contracts where he had signed them in their names without their permission. The courtroom audience gasped when the lawyer pointed out Kody's signature, indicating a cold-blooded degree of forethought. The tape of Aurora was played once more, this time in conjunction with the testimony of Christine and Janelle. When combined with first-hand accounts and audio evidence, there was little doubt left. The recording caught Kody teaching Aurora what to do about financial shortfalls, so the wives would never know. The murmur in the courtroom reached a crescendo, and even the media reporter gallery could not contain their surprise. Robyn, normally not one for loud declarations in public, finally broke her silence. Her words were calculated but powerful. She acknowledged complicity in some of the decisions, but put them in a context of coercion, stating that Kody's dominance gave her no alternative. "I wanted to do what was fair to the family," she said. But the fact was he had all the leverage, his method always prevailed. The judge listened carefully, making the occasional note. He posed questions that charted the extent of the deceit, how control of finances had been used as an instrument of emotional manipulation. The wives recounted not only financial loss but also lost trust, the strain on family relationships, and the psychological toll of decades of ulterior motives. This portion of the trial was crucial. The testimony was no longer mere figures or ledgers. It was intimate, an expose of how Kody's behavior had affected the lives of those closest to him. The judge, knowing the seriousness, underscored that these testimonies would heavily influence both liability and possible sentencing. Outside, fans watched live streams, forums, and social media threads that became saturated with commentary. Headlines: "Sister Wives Speak," "Kody Brown's Empire of Secrets," and "Aurora's Tape Triggers Explosive Courtroom Revelations." The drama engaged viewers, as the emotional testimony provided a human element to the financial scandal. In the wake of this testimony, by the conclusion of it, the courtroom was no longer merely a forum for legal arguments. It was a stage where family secrets spanning decades were laid bare before the public. Kody's carefully built picture of patriarchal domination was crumbling, and the road to criminal responsibility seemed clearer than ever. The time that everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. The courtroom dimmed slightly as the video system aired Aurora's secret tape in its entirety. It was unlike anything ever before seen. The sound was distinct, the images unmistakable. Aurora had recorded Kody Brown talking of financial schemes with shocking specificity, revealing a web of deceit over decades. Kody was heard in the recording teaching Aurora how to transfer huge amounts of money discreetly, forging financial documents, and producing fake contracts to make it seem as though all operations were genuine. His voice, which had been so authoritative and confident before, now came through with a hesitant, nearly nervous tone, fearful that one wrong move would ruin him. The tape didn't so much suggest criminal activity as declare it. Kody's commands spelled out precisely how to conceal assets from the wives and authorities. Every word she taped was a falling piece of a puzzle, establishing intent and forethought. The prosecutor stopped the tape at various points, pointing to lines that literally implicated Kody in fraud, conspiracy, and even possible money laundering. The judge was leaning forward now, scowl deepening as the evidence played. This was more than lack of funds being managed. This was criminal behavior, well chronicled. Aurora's courage in taping the recording became the focal point. Her bravery turned her from a witness into a central witness, offering undeniable evidence that Kody's manipulations were not accidents, but premeditated, planned actions. Kody, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Decades of the patriarch commanding respect and fear were for the first time threatened. His legal team frantically whispered among themselves, attempting to come up with a reply to evidence that was almost impossible to challenge. Every strip of the tape appeared to cinch the noose tighter, uncovering a far more sinister layer of dishonesty than anyone could have predicted. The courtroom gasped again as the tape unveiled Kody instructing Aurora how to create false tax returns and manipulate the value of real property holdings. His voice was even-toned, almost didactic, an irrefutable show of knowledge and purpose. The ramifications were incredible: decades of financial domination, manipulation, and cover-up, now on record and available for the court to see. Outside the courthouse, Twitter blew its lid. Excerpts of Aurora's recording were posted, news agencies dissected the audio, and fans and critics alike argued the severity of Kody's behavior. Headlines blared, "Aurora's tape shatters Kody Brown's defense," and "the secret recording that will put a patriarch behind bars." Tension in the courtroom was electric. The prosecution's plan became apparent. Aurora's tape was the key to their case, the direct connection between Kody's self-projected image and criminal behavior long under suspicion. Each word she'd recorded was a stake in the heart of Kody Brown's carefully crafted persona. Once the day was over, it was clear that the tape would be a game-changer. What had begun as an internal family issue had escalated into a public controversy with very real repercussions. Undefended Kody's history was no longer hearsay or accusations. It was real on paper and irrefutable. Aurora had presented the court with the evidence it required, and the road to justice for the wives, and to responsibility for Kody, was now inevitable. As the trial resumed the next day, everyone was waiting for Kody Brown. For weeks, he had sported an image of calm, playing the injured patriarch, protecting his family. The strain of Aurora's tape started to tell, though. Each hushed whisper and agitated look revealed a man coming to terms with the fact that his masterfully built alibi was crumbling. Kody's lawyer tried to discredit the tape, accusing it of being selectively edited and taken out of context. They said that Aurora had misconstrued Kody's instructions and that any discrepancies in the money were honest errors, the natural outcome of running a complicated family empire. But the prosecution had been waiting for these arguments. They yielded complete, unaired copies of the recordings, proving that the instructions were intentional and uniform, with no room for confusion. Cross-examination saw the prosecutor's queries strike with surgical accuracy. "Mr. Brown, on this tape, you tell Aurora to send $200,000 to an untraceable account. Isn't that right?" Kody paused, fidgeting in his seat. "Objection," his lawyer interrupted, but the judge overruled it, permitting the questioning to proceed. "Isn't it a fact," the prosecutor continued to press, "that these activities were intended to hide assets from your wives and the authorities?" Kody's eyes flashed toward Aurora, who sat in mute, mesmerized recording of every response. He swallowed hard, struggling to recover, but the weight of the tape was more than obvious. His defense collapsed bit by bit. Witness upon witness was called to attest to the prosecution's story. Accountants, former employees, and even family friends took the stand to testify about Kody's habits of deceitful money management. Each account, when coupled with Aurora's tape, established a pattern of fraud. The courtroom grumbled as accountants outlined Kody's tactics: fabricating agreements, overstuffing costs, concealing revenue, and staging fictitious loans to make the appearance of compliance a reality. Even Kody's longtime supporters had difficulty coming to his defense. When questioned about some of Kody's property transactions and allegations of money laundering, their own accounts conflicted with each other. The contradictions underlined the magnitude of Kody's schemes and eroded what little credibility he had left. The once powerful patriarch now appeared vulnerable, caught in a web of his own making. The tension reached a boiling point when the judge addressed Kody directly. Mr. Brown, the evidence presented shows a deliberate pattern of deception and manipulation you have had the opportunity to explain. But the recordings and supporting testimony paint a clear picture of your actions. Kody opened his mouth to respond, but the words faltered, swallowed by the magnitude of what had been revealed. Outside the courtroom, reporters buzzed with speculation. Headlines screamed, "Kody Brown's alibi shattered by tape evidence," and Sister Wives Patriarch falters as defense collapses. Fans and critics alike questioned how a man who had once ruled with loyalty and respect could come to be so vulnerable. At the end of the day, the truth could no longer be denied. Kody's defense had collapsed. Aurora's tape had not only revealed his financial misdeeds, but had also laid waste to the story he had spent decades building. The courtroom had seen a turning point, and the destiny of Kody Brown now hung nearer to being sealed. As the courtroom doors shut, the effects of the day's disclosures spread far beyond the legal process. The Brown family, for so long familiar with operating in the public eye, was now confronted by an internal tempest more ferocious than any they had encountered before. Christine sat silently in the front row, surrounded by a sense of vindication, but also by tears. She had spent years questioning Kody's financial judgments, silently wondering if something was not right. Having Aurora's tape revealed in court answered her worst fears, but it also brought a measure of justice long delayed. She looked at Janelle, whose face reflected her own shock, relief, and hard-as-nails determination. Robyn, on the other hand, looked visibly shaken. In spite of her history of defending Kody in public pronouncements, she could no longer turn a blind eye to the evidence. For the first time, she had looked vulnerable, aware that her complicity in some of the financial shenanigans, either knowingly or unwillingly, could find themselves on trial. Rumors within the courtroom hinted that Robyn's testimony would prove pivotal in the coming days. Aurora, the young woman whose bravery had set off the collapse of Kody's empire, bore the burden of her actions. Although she had made the tape in a spirit of justice, the media rumor-mongering and publicity left her nervous. Journalists outside the courthouse were already referring to it as the tape that brought down Kody Brown, which gave her the shivers. She had uncovered family secrets, and there was no going back. Family life changed overnight. Siblings and extended family started calling one another, some verbally supporting, others furious at the public display. Old grudges were reopened, and family alliances were strained. The formerly cohesive Brown home now experienced divisions that could potentially never be restored. Social media reinforced the pandemonium. Supporters argued every utterance from the courtroom, analyzing every snippet of the tape, and wagering on what would happen to the Brown family next. Memes went around capturing Kody's shocked expressions, and commentators were applauding Aurora for her courage. The narrative had moved beyond the courtroom to becoming a national dialogue regarding family, power, and betrayal. In the midst of the chaos, Kody was largely quiet. Pals and supporters huddled that he was formulating an ultimate defense strategy, but even they confessed that the circumstances were growing more vulnerable. His control over the family had frayed severely, even those who had previously taken his direction into question whether they could do so anymore. The wives, though, gained a sense of new purpose. They started coordinating, sharing information, and strategizing ways to protect themselves legally and financially. Christine and Janelle were particularly fired up, wanting to see that Kody could not spin the story again. Aurora's recording had tipped the scales of power in the family towards the wives, who now enjoyed a leverage denied them for years. In the evening, news headlines featured printouts that described the pandemonium in harsh terms. Sister Wives Patriarch exposed, family fractures after secret tape revelation, and Aurora's courage, the moment that changed everything. The world had become a witness, and the Brown family would never be the same again. As the days passed, the prosecution honed their aim. Equipped with Aurora's hidden tape, they started systematically laying out evidence that painted a dismal picture of Kody Brown's decades-long financial abuse. Every fact, bank records, real estate transfers, and family testimonies was carefully coordinated to display a continuous tradition of manipulation and deception. The courtroom was electric with anticipation. Reporters, legal experts, and Sister Wives fans filled the galleries, all anxious to see what many were terming the most explosive moment in sister wives' history. The prosecution opened with the emphasis on the chain of financial choices that once went unchallenged. Each controversial buy-up, from high-end houses to lavish getaways, was questioned. Aurora's tape was the foundation, showing intimate discussions that betrayed Kody's knowledge and direct manipulation of plans aimed at his gain at the cost of his wives and children. Witness by witness, each testifying, each adding another piece of the heaping evidence, Christine had explained secret accounts and deceitful contracts. Janelle spoke of years of financial deception, how her own earnings had been mismanaged and redirected. Even Robyn reluctantly corroborated some of the financial arrangements made according to the prosecution's story. Her testimony, originally intended to exonerate Kody, ended up fortifying the case against him. Court observers added that the power of Aurora's tape was not only in its information, but in its credibility. Her testimony, coupled with supporting documents, left little doubt. Each sentence she uttered on the tape portrayed Kody as a man who intentionally manipulated those around him, creating a financial maze that now appeared impossible to navigate. Kody, sitting in the defendant's chair, grew more and more agitated. The cocky attitude he had carried through earlier installments of the court drama were beginning to disintegrate. As the prosecution read out the charges, fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice, his eyes flicked nervously, betraying the seriousness of the situation. With each revelation the prosecution made, his erstwhile unbreakable image crumbled, shifting public opinion from fascination to outrage. Outside court, the media storm grew. News headlines such as Aurora's tape, the evidence that could jail Kody Brown, and family patriarch exposed in financial scandal proliferated. Social media arguments broke out over whether the sentence was to be lenient or harsh. Fans analyzed every clip, and conspiracy theorists were speculating about ulterior motives and secret supporters. Aurora, previously a supporting role actress, was transformed into a symbol of courage and truth. The judge, recognizing the high-profile nature of the case, kept proceedings firmly in control. Her questions were sharp, intended to establish discrepancies and expose any attempt at misleading answers. She stressed fairness, but her tone made it clear that she was not afraid to hold Kody's feet to the fire. The courtroom was now a stage where each word, each movement, and each piece of evidence had deep meaning. By the end of the day, the prosecution had effectively painted Kody as a deliberate and long-term manipulator, paving the way for the last acts of the trial. The seemingly invincible family matriarch was now completely laid bare, his destiny hanging precariously by the threads of Aurora's bravery. As the trial reached its dramatic final stages, Kody and his lawyers rushed to discover some means of saving what little was left of their credibility. The previously self-assured patriarch seemed more and more desperate, often seen pacing around the outside of the courtroom or standing in tight huddles with his lawyers. Kody's case relied on a slender premise that Aurora's tape had been pulled out of context, and that any fiscal mismanagement was accidental, the product of bad counsel rather than willful fraud. But prosecutors expected this line of argument, and had carefully prepared counter-narrative, revealing inconsistencies in Kody's previous words and actions. The air inside the courtroom was charged. Media representatives occupied all available seats, cameras directed to catch the slightest reaction from Kody, the wives, and Aurora. Each eye in the room appeared to recognize that this was a pivotal moment, not only for the trial, but for the Brown family legacy itself. Christine, Janelle, and the other wives sat as a group, a solid phalanx, their faces serene yet electric with the weight of what they stood to lose. Aurora's attendance at court was also important. The young woman who had courageously made the recording now sat in the public gallery, observing the events with a combination of apprehension and determination. She knew the risk, her testimony might finally deliver justice, but it also put her at the center of a media firestorm. Kody's attorneys tried to discredit the tape's validity, bringing in witnesses to propose that Aurora was motivated by a personal grudge or was misconstruing intimate conversations. But with every testimony, the prosecution expertly laid out the proof and intent behind Aurora's recording, leaving scant room for speculation. The judge viewed the tape as not an error in judgment, but rather as an intentional revealing of Kody's years of dishonesty. Outside of the courthouse, fans and critics responded in real time. social media swelled with rumor, memes, and commentary. Every clip of courtroom action was analyzed, posted, and discussed. "Kody Brown's empire crumbles," said one popular headline, and another shouted out, "Aurora, the voice who uncovered 22 years of secrets." Despite efforts by Kody to keep a calm facade, telling signs gave him away, a clenched jaw, fidgeting eyes, and constant looks at the jury, the weight of years of lies, now all out in the open, bore down with an intensity he could no longer sidestep. By evening, the courtroom was in stunned silence. The prosecution evidence, especially Aurora's tape, had gleamingly outlined a record of ongoing financial exploitation and dishonesty. Kody's defense, once so certain, now wavered and grew ever more frantic. The drama was set for a dramatic finale, one that would not just decide his destiny, but the future of the Brown family dynamics as well. The courtroom was breathless as the judge read out the verdict. Kody Brown, the once untouchable matriarch of the Sister Wives dynasty, was convicted on several counts of fraud, financial exploitation, and conspiracy, all supported by Aurora's incriminating tape. The verdict was unprecedented: 22 years in prison. Gasps were heard all over the courtroom. Some of the wives cried openly, joy mixed with sadness over the breakdown of their family life. Aurora, who had risked everything to reveal the truth, sat silently, drinking in the moment. Her braveness had changed history for the Browns, but it had cost her dearly. Kody's response was one of shock and disbelief. The full weight of decades of secrecy, manipulation, and deceit had eventually caught up with him. His lawyers were stunned, realizing there was little hope for appeal after such conclusive evidence. The judge underlined that the sentencing was not only supposed to punish, but also to warn others who would use confidence and kinship for gain. Outside the courthouse, reporters besieged it. The headlines read, "Kody Brown sentenced to 22 years. Aurora's tape ends an era," and "Sister Wives scandal. Justice finally served." Social media exploded with comment, debate, and fan response. The Brown family's drama, previously centered on reality television, soon turned into a cautionary tale about greed, secrecy, and responsibility. In the meantime, the wives started the painstaking task of rebuilding their lives. Christine and Janelle, although traumatized by the ordeal, derived consolation in their strength and in reclaiming control over their economic futures. Robyn underwent tough questioning but was still committed to keeping her children safe and saving what was left of her family's honor. Aurora, now acknowledged as the whistleblower who rocked everything, still lived under public scrutiny, managing the added fame with the private consequences of the trial. Her recording not only brought Kody to task, but represented the strength of courage, integrity, and the desire to expose injustice, even in the most complex family relationships. The courtroom cleared, and Kody Brown's legacy was changed forever. The empire he had established on secrets and deception was brought crumbling down, leaving the lessons of responsibility, bravery, and the final truth: that no amount of fame and power can protect a person from the repercussions of his or her deeds. And so the Sister Wives saga moved into a new page, one where justice had been heard, and the reverberations of Aurora's secret tape would be heard for years to come.